Hey everyone, Dave Isaacs back with you for JamPlay.com, and this is a lesson on strumming. Now, we've touched on quite a bit of this up to this point, but this lesson is going to introduce something that should be huge for you. This is a strum concept that will allow you to learn practically any rhythm pattern that you can ever think of, that you will ever encounter in the course of a song. In my private teaching, I often have people come to me and say, I need to learn some new strums. And my usual response to that is, well, what if I showed you a technique that would allow you to learn every strum? And the distinction is, quote unquote, learning a strum is essentially just memorizing a sequence of patterns. And you may have seen stuff like this, where on paper somebody will just say, or out loud someone will say, down, down, up, down, up, down. And maybe even on a sheet of paper you just see the letters D, D, U, D, U, D. Well, okay, that's not telling you anything about music though. It's just telling you move the arm, move the arm. That's purely mechanical. But we're dealing with rhythm here. Strumming is rhythm. You are learning how to be essentially a rhythm section. Right? A single person playing an acoustic guitar by themselves is simulating, at least in many cases, the feeling of a whole band playing. You want to generate that same kind of momentum. So you really want to think about rhythm from a musical perspective. So here's what we're doing. We're thinking about a steady 4 count. Now this concept applies to more rhythms, more meters, I should say, than just 4, but 4 is a very convenient place to start. If I play 4 quarter notes, then I'm just strumming down 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. And as I've pointed out before, in between those downstrokes, the hands got to come back. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now that articulates 8 eighth notes. Those eighth notes are pairs. Now, if you take a look at your PDF, exercise 1, the top line, has eighth notes barred together in 4s. You will see eighth notes barred together in 4s when there's 4 of them, or there might be 2 pairs of 2. But the idea of groupings is important here. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. There's really just one movement. There's the swing down and the return. So exercise 1 is simply 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. One and 2 and 3 and 4. Notice that it ends, exercise 1, with a quarter note, so that last strum is not followed by an upstroke. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now, all the variations here are just different combinations of quarter notes, eighth notes, and half notes. If you look at exercise 2, even if you're still not comfortable with reading these rhythms, visually you can see how that first quarter note, that first beat, is separated. By the way, notice also that we don't have the round or oval note heads. We have slashes with stems and bars attached to them to indicate the rhythm values. This is just rhythmic notation, and it's fairly common. It's the kind of thing you will see in lead sheets, chord charts, and so forth. In any case, looking at exercise 2, notice the groupings. You have a quarter note alone, a pair of eighth notes, and 2 more pairs of eighth notes that are barred together. That's going to sound like this. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and. Well, here's your big idea. My right hand, my strumming hand movement is no different playing exercise 2 than exercise 1. It's just that on exercise 2, I'm not striking the strings on my way back up after count 1. Exercise 1 did this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Exercise 2 did this. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and. You don't see really anything different in that strumming hand. Look at exercise 3. You'll get the same idea. You might even be able to get an idea of what you're going to hear just from looking at it, again thinking about quarter notes and eighth notes and the visual separation on the page. Exercise 3 has an individual quarter note alone, 2 pairs of eighth notes, and another quarter note. So the count of this would be 1, 2, and 3, and 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Here's the thing. I could count all the eighth notes without playing them all. I'm going to play exactly the same rhythm, but this time I'm counting every eighth note. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and. You might be getting the idea here that the eighth note, that steady 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and, doesn't have to be played, but it is being articulated by the swing of the strumming hand. Downstroke on what we call the downbeats, the count, 1, 2, 3, 4, and upstrokes in between on the upbeats, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and. And so that big concept is that it doesn't matter when I choose to strike the strings as far as whether or not my arm is going to keep swinging. I'm going to keep articulating those eighth notes, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and regardless of whether I'm playing exercise 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and exercise 2, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and, or exercise 3, 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Hand keeps moving. Here's exercise 4. I'll just go ahead and play it. I'll bet you can count it. Notice the half note at the end of that. Here it is with the count. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and. You see where we're going here. Ultimately, reading music notation, whether we're talking just about rhythms or whether we're talking about the notes, is about being able to look at something on paper and have an idea of how it's going to sound. I think too many of us learned this stuff early on as if when you learned to read music, each note was a question on a quiz that had nothing to do with the note before it or after it. You're looking at patterns. And just in the same way that once you've learned how to read, you don't sound out words anymore, you don't notice individual letters, you don't even really notice individual words. We take in information in ideas. Whole small ideas, whole phrases, whole sentences. Well, when you look at exercise 5, knowing that we're dividing up a 4-count measure, it should be pretty clear that what you're looking at is 1, and 2, and 3, 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4. Here's exercise 6, continuing on with the same concept. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, and 2, 3, 4, and 1, and 2, 3, 4, and 1, and 2, 3, 4, and 1, and 2, 3, 4. Now, exercises 7 and 8 are going to vary things a little bit. We won't have exactly the same rhythm in every measure. I'll play them a little bit more slowly as I count. Here's 7. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 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 1, and 2, and 3, 4. Notice how that one ends with 2 quarter notes. Here's exercise 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Now I'm going to go through each one of these, top to bottom, with the same beat. Here's our steady tempo. 1, 2, 3. Exercise 1. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and I'm just going to flow on into 2. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4. Here's 3, 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4. Exercise 4. 1, 2 and 3, 4 and our half note and 5. And 2 and 3, 4. Exercise 6. Notice my right hand, my strumming hand, has not changed. 3, 4, here's 7, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 8, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Now playing through all of those in time like that is a great goal for you, but it's not necessarily where you would start. I would start with a single measure and just make sure you have the rhythm. You might just choose to tap and count. For example, looking at exercise 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Feel it and then play it. The standard as you practice is that once you can repeat something 2, 3, or 4 times without a mistake, you've pretty much absorbed it. So just keep that in mind. You start off with little things, you add on a little bit more, and as you're missing things, be aware of what you're missing and try to get a sense of why you're missing it. If you can't figure that out, then maybe you need to slow down and just take a closer look. Or if you're working with a teacher, then ask them or go to someone and say, hey, what am I doing wrong here? But all of this stuff should be pretty straightforward. I think you may have already observed that we're returning to the same concepts and the same ideas over and over and over again. That's the good news. So even when you're trying to struggle through something, know that we're just going to circle around to it again, and every time you come to it, it's going to get easier. And when you reach a certain point where you can look back and say, wow, I struggled with that, and now this is easy because I've seen it so many times, that's a really good feeling. I hope you've experienced some of that already, and if you haven't, I promise that you will.